Well, thank you for joining me for this quick little activity here. I hope you're enjoying this workshop, but I thought I might obviously give you a little work to do. I know sometimes the lectures don't really help um, as much as we like to think they would. I don't like to hear myself talk, but at any rate, I want you to participate in this so that you can begin to see how the concepts and things that we've talked about so far can relate, and then what we're going to be talking about in our next couple of videos that we're going to be looking at, or a couple lessons that we'll be looking at. So this is just a quick activity. It's not in-depth psychological anything like that. It's just a way to illustrate some perspectives. So let's not stress over it or anything like that. Couple of things you will need. You will need a piece of paper, notebook, pen, pencil, something to write with. You'll want to do this. Don't attempt to do this with a text message or with your phone, because you want to be able to think and write really quickly. And the reason for that is because it's a trigger mechanism. You want to write the first things that comes into your head. But those are the things that you will need. Preferably a notebook, because you're going to need a journal anyway if you decide to join us in the actual membership portion of this as well, because they're going to be doing some activities in there and studies and things like that where you'll need that notebook or that journal. So first of all, if you're ready, you will also be using a pause button, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll through these rather quickly on my end, but you may need more time. So when I ask the question, we go through the question, hit the pause button, complete your answer, and then come back. And that's how we'll do that. Okay, with that being said, you can pause it now, go get your pencil and paper, and then come back to this. Okay, here's the instructions for this quick activity. And first of all, like I said, these are quick response answers. Okay, the goal is not to ponder that question too deeply, but write down the first thought that comes into your mind. I'll explain that later. But to relax, there's no right or wrong answers. This is just to give you some insight into yourself. Okay, there's no right or wrong answers. Next, okay, before we get to question one other thing is you're going to be writing some responses that relate to others. They're not going to read this. This is private. It's for your eyes only. But at the end, when we get to the analysis portion, we're going to look at how these answers relate. And I may be giving you too much information here. So let's get started with question one. And again, use the pause button after each question. Question one, who are you? So in using brief, short adjectives or descriptive phrases, describe who you are. Who are you? We talked about self-actualization, so on the top of Maslow's hierarchy, so who are you? Okay, use your pause button. Question number two, describe how you believe your best friend would describe you. And be truthful. Like I said, they're not going to read this. So how would your best friend describe you? And use your pause button. Question number three, quickly describe how your worst enemy would describe you. Yeah, we're going to get that perspective. Now, if you don't have an enemy, then describe how you think they may describe you. If you had an enemy, who's someone that wouldn't like you, and for what reasons? Okay, so how would you think your worst enemy would describe you? And pause. Question 4. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. Okay, and now that you've made it, okay, you have arrived. You've achieved that success. You know, everybody has that picture of success in their head. So with that in mind, now that you've made it, do the same process using brief, short adjectives and descriptive phrases. Describe who you are. Now that you've made it, who are you? What does that look like? And use the pause button. Okay, question 5. Now that you've made it, now that you've arrived, in a brief short adjectives, using descriptive phrases, describe how your best friend would describe you. What's your best friend think of you now? You know, how would they describe you? Take a moment, use the pause button, write down your answers. And question number 6. Now that you've made it, you've arrived, how does your worst enemy describe you now? How does your worst enemy describe you now that you've made it? And use your pause button. Okay, let's take a look at these answers now and kind of analyze this a little bit. Now, we could probably spend hours going in-depth analysis and stuff like this. Listen, I forgot to mention this. I'm not a psychologist. This is just an internal mechanism to help us begin to think about who we are. This is not a big psychological test or anything like that. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, like I said, we can spend hours analyzing this, but we'll save that, later when we look at the other models that I'm going to show you in later lessons using our Venn diagram and the other point, so that you can begin to understand who you are and how you're made. We're going to look at this point right now. What I want to focus on, in most cases, not all, when we describe ourselves, we take a look at the way you describe yourself. What are the key words and phrases? Okay, are they external? Are they physical? In other words, are you a doctor? Am I a lawyer? Am I a craftsman? And am I a carpenter? Am I a real estate agent? Am I a factory worker? Do I dig ditches? Am I a plumber? Are the methods or adjectives and phrases you're using to describe yourself physical? Are they occupations? Are they roles? Okay, in most cases, yes, you may get a mixture of some, and that's okay. That's actually very good. But this first question here is the automatic version of your current identity. Okay, this is how you see yourself. Remember that self-actualization portion? This is where that is. This is you, off the cuff. Okay. And I know you're more than just that, but that's the first things that come into mind. So now let's look at question 2. How did your friend describe you? Are these descriptors based on those same roles and occupations, like question 1, or are they based more on internal values and emotions, like he's giving, considerate, helpful, smart, those types of adjectives? And you'll find that is interesting, and we'll get to that right after we look at question 3. Question 3 says, how did your enemy describe you? Are these descriptors similar to question 1 or question 2? Okay? Chances are they're more like question 2, but they're opposing values. In other words, he's mean, he's angry, spiteful. These are negative traits. These can be indications of limiting beliefs. Now, we'll talk more about limiting beliefs when we get into that layering model that I've kind of alluded to a couple of times when we actually look at that lesson. We're going to go into that and talk about what a limiting belief is. But these are things that you would not want to be described by. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now, let me back up one more before we get to that. Something to look at here, as I mentioned earlier, our version of ourselves a lot of times is based on occupation, roles, physical environments. Would you agree, based on your answers, that question 2 and question 3 are based on internal character traits? Giving, smart, mean, angry, spiteful. I'm looking at the negative ones here. They're not based on roles. I don't think anyone ever gets mad at anybody because they're a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer, no matter what a craftsman, you know, whatever their role is. I don't think anyone uses that as a mechanism to dislike somebody, unless there's been a conflict within there. So that's what I want you to look at, and we'll talk more about that later. So now that we look at question 4, the picture of success, you've made it. Okay, you have reached that level of where you can say, man, I made it. I finally achieved what I wanted to achieve. Okay, what does that success look like to you? Okay, just what I wanted to do in that mechanism is I wanted you to feel what that success is. What would you want to be? So now, look at that description of yourself. How is it different than the very first question you said? Now that you've made it, define yourself. Did you define yourself by your roles? Or did you define yourself with adjectives that related to internal? I'm happy, I'm wealthy, I'm secure, those type of adjectives. Did you define yourself by your role? I'm an astronaut, I'm a whatever. Or did you find yourself by internal mechanisms? I've said that many different ways, but you can compare that, and here's what you see in most cases. We define ourselves, as in question 1, by our external world. When what we're trying to achieve, as in question 4, is internal. It's all about the feelings, it's all about the emotions, it's all about that. Yet we try to achieve that from external. And see, and that's what Maslow's hierarchy does, is it focuses on the external. The base of the pyramid is all external, physical, food, water, shelter, external descriptors. And the top of the pyramid is internal. So we can clearly see by question 1 and question 4 how we described ourselves from external point of view, roles, occupations, those types of things. But when we achieve success, is it more internal? Would that be a fair analysis? Now, like I said, this is not in all cases, but I find it in the majority. So that's what I want you to get out of question 1 and question 4. Now, and that's kind of what we talked about there. So here's what I want you to see. Has your identity of yourself shifted? Has it gone from more external to internal? Okay. Your picture of success, like I said, it can be a little of both. And the reason is described by Maslow's hierarchy. Let me reiterate that. Because as we fulfill that base of the pyramid, we then fulfill the upper part as well. Those two begin connected. So once we've made it, when we make that statement, once we've achieved our level of success, those external things didn't even come to mind. It became more internal. So we strive for internal satisfaction. Okay, now look at question 5, your picture of success. Now, how does your best friend see you? This is interesting because it illustrates how we want to be viewed by others when we succeed. Okay, do we still have, does your friend still say in question 2 the same as question 5? Is it the same? Or is your friend more in an envious situation? Have you placed yourself above your friend now? What does that look like? Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. It's for you to look at, and I'm asking you some questions here. You may get a mix of external and internal descriptions, because you may get something like, now that you have money and finances and you've made it, you might say, well, he's charitable, he's giving, he's more calm, he's peaceful, he's those types of things. You may have some external stuff, he's got a new car, he's confident, he's this. What is it? How does that friend describe you? Now, this next one, when we look at this, your picture of success, how does your worst enemy now describe you? Okay, and it's interesting because many times it can illustrate a revenge type of description. Toby Keith, just to bring out Toby Keith, he wrote a song called How Do You Like Me Now? And that was just a story of, for country music fans, you probably know it, but for those who don't, it's a story of when he was in high school and this girl he liked wouldn't give him the time of day. But now that he's become this big famous country music singer, he's singing to her, how do you like me now? Kind of that spiteful, revengeful type thing. But at the same time, he's confident because he's overcome those obstacles, or he's overcome that limiting belief that she was projecting onto him, and he can get to stand up and say, how do you like me now? Then that is illustration of that battle that we fight. Because that enemy that we have right there, that is that limiting belief that I'm referring to, that I keep going back to, and we're going to do that in our next lesson. Because that limiting belief is what holds us back. It keeps us from being that picture of who we are to that picture of how we want to succeed. In an overall picture, there's steps in between there to get there, but that's a whole nother lesson and course. I just want you for today understand these pictures and these different perspectives of who we are, who we think we are, along those lines. So I hope that made some sense to you, because as we go into our next lessons, we're going to look at the two other models, and one is a layering model, which again I've alluded to, and this one will explain the external influences and how they, kind of like peeling an onion, we have to peel off the different layers until we get to the center of our core beliefs. And it kind of works the same as Maslow's hierarchy, but it's just coming from instead of being more physical things to the internal, it's looking at more our belief systems, truth, facts, different things like that. So, and then the other model is going to be the Venn diagram, where I'm going to go into more. This is my personal diagram, but it's how we are created, our different aspects of our mind, body, spirit, those types of things. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this. I did want to give you a hands-on approach so that you can begin to take an external and internal look at where you are so that we can progress and move forward. So with that, I'm going to end this video and get this uploaded for you. Actually, it's already uploaded if you're here. And we'll see you in our next lesson. God bless you, and take care, and we'll see you then.